for joining us this evening. Got a good group and we're going to get to know each other a little bit better by way of a few breakout rooms. And you will meet a large set of our board that is here with us this evening. I think there's about 9 or so of them, and our editor of the Rockridge News as well. Hi, Anna. Okay, so a little bit of background about RCPC. I think many of you are aware, and I see lots of familiar faces on the screen here. Our organization has been around for many decades in Rockridge, fighting for the needs of our neighborhood, most specifically related to development and transportation. But we also have a number of huge successes in our history, such as advocating and securing the Rockridge Library, negotiating for excellent community benefits at a number of sites, including a Safeway at Claremont and College. So those are just to name a few things, but we are really thrilled to be able to hear folks' perspective this evening on this particular site, or where we have done a lot of work to date. So I'm going to hand it over, or I'm going to go through the agenda briefly, which you should see here. We'll start with some context from our land use chair, and that's Ken Rich. And then we'll break into discussion groups. Those are going to be in Zoom breakout rooms with 2 specific questions. We'll do a report back in the middle of that, and then at the end. So I think this gives an opportunity to really hear from everyone. We will be taking notes. We have received emails as well. And so that's what we're here for, to serve the residents of Rockridge and the broader community. So thanks so much. I'll pass it over to Ken.
Okay, hi everyone. I hope you can hear me. I can see, it's always unnerving because I can only see a few people that I'm talking to at a time. I'm Ken Rich, I'm the land use chair for RCPC. And before we start our discussion, I was just going to try to orient people. I think for many people, a lot of what I say will be reviewed, so I will go quickly and we will probably stop for a couple questions after I do my context. But not too many because we want to make sure we have time for our discussion. So we're here to talk about what's been known as the Ridge site, that large empty lot on the corner of Broadway and Pleasant Valley. Here we are. Here's our site. You all know this area. I also have another picture zoomed out a little bit where we can kind of see why this is such an important site, how close it is to BART, how much in the middle of many things it is, and how much access it has to many, many parts of the community. A little other context, as most of you probably know, this piece of the larger shopping center site was going to be phase 2 of what is called Shops at the Ridge. And it was, as far as we know, intended to be a smaller scale retail center. I've heard it the idea may be compared to 4th Street in Berkeley, more upscale, more sort of small scale shops. And that was scrapped well before COVID. So not about COVID, but just based on the fact that the retail market in the late 00s was really starting to change. And this, I think the developer just judged this not to be feasible anymore. The site is about 5 acres, which is a very large site for an empty site in Oakland. And it's about a 12 or 15-minute walk to BART, and it's on other transportation. The zoning is what's called Community Commercial 2, CC2, and the maximum height limit is 75 feet. And what you can do in CC2 is a variety of commercial activities, as well as residential is permitted there. So sorry for the dense text here. Just want to walk through a little bit of where, for those of you who haven't been following closely with RCPC and our neighboring groups, what our activities have been around the Ridge site. Early in 2022, we, I said petition, I meant survey. My apologies, I didn't catch that. We circulated a survey to our residents asking about their preferences for development of the site. It went to, I think, several hundred, someone else on here will probably know that number, of our residents, and we got a number of answers back, but residential and small scale retail were among the highest responses of what people would like to have seen on this site. And then, as I think we all know, later on, Home Depot, and later on in the year, Home Depot came in with an application to build a store. RCPC wrote a letter to Mayor Schaaf and other leaders expressing our opposition to the Home Depot proposal. shared by panel and UBA and our surrounding neighborhood groups, and taking the position that housing was the preferred use for the site. Then in June 2022, in response to the city's draft housing element, which is like the city's governing document around housing that's redone every 8 years and is being done now, RCPC advocated for the site to be included in a list that you always put into these documents of potential housing sites. It was not originally included, but after our advocacy, it was included. And then the most fun one, which I missed because I was out of town, but I wish I'd been there, was in October of 2022, RCPC, together with our neighborhood groups panel and UBA, held a really well-attended rally at the site to advocate against the Home Depot and for housing on the site. So what's the status? The site is owned by a private family. It's controlled by a real estate company called TRC that develops and operates shopping centers. TRC happens to own the land where both Safeways in our neighborhood are, the one on College and this one. And they hold a ground lease on the entire Ridge property, which means they basically, even though they don't own it, they contractually control what happens there for the duration of the lease, which is a long time. And from what we understand, the arrangement between TRC and the owner in this lease does not currently allow for residential development. So early last year, with TRC's permission, the ground leaseholder, Home Depot submitted a preliminary application to build a store on the site. I think you all know this story. After effective pressure from a number of neighborhood groups, press attention, and a finding from the city that the proposal was not consistent with the zoning, Home Depot withdrew. We RCPC have met with TRC representatives a number of times to express our desire to basically partner with them to see this become residential. We don't think, I mean, they're sort of, they hold their cards close to their vest. We don't think they're particularly opposed. We just think that it is not allowed right now, and they're probably not fighting that battle very hard, but we don't think they're ultimately opposed to housing on the site. So what's the purpose of today's meeting? I mean, we, RCPC, in this year and working with our neighboring groups, has really decided to make this one of our causes. And we have kind of come to the conclusion that gentle pressure with a sort of community vision to basically come back to the city and the owner of the site and anyone else who wants to listen, the press, with, you know, this is what we'd like to see here. And, you know, more than just like build housing, but like something a little more fully formed to basically say to people, we really do want to see this, and this is what it might look like. The reason I've underlined the word general is I don't think it's our feeling that we should design something for a prospective developer or for anyone that's too specific, but we want to kind of establish a general vision that's supportive for housing on the site. And we feel like that visioning process is a really good advocacy tool for us to sort of see this happen. And, you know, I will add from my perspective, having worked in this kind of work for a long time, is this is a long process. It's going to take a while to bring everyone around, and then it's going to take a while to get it approved and built. And we just have to stay the course, and we have to be clear that we don't want to see other things here. We don't want to see, you know, TRC come back with, you know, another kind of big box, which might be consistent with the zoning, whereas Home Depot wasn't. We don't want to see fast food. We don't want to see a car dealership. These are the kinds of things that they've proposed. We need to be, we feel, consistent that this is what we want to see. Housing and some other things, and we'll talk about what else in our breakout groups. And the purpose for today is just to kick this off, and I want to be clear, we're not trying to come out of today, this is important, with any sort of answers or the vision. We just are collecting raw fodder, raw data. There'll be many more meetings, and we'll describe what some of those are in a moment. There'll be many more meetings to talk and sort of hone this. So, you know, there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. We're just going to try to collect your thoughts and dreams in this first meeting. And I do want to also mention, I should have mentioned it earlier, we are already planning, because we know, and this will come up in our groups, there's a healthy debate around affordable housing, market rate housing. What is affordable housing? What kind of affordable housing? We're going to have a whole separate town hall with experts on that in March. So certainly a totally relevant topic for today, but also want you to know that we're going to be doing more on that in March. Wow, we have 82 people. So I don't know, Ali, if you can create another 1 or 2 breakout groups on the fly. We didn't expect 82 people, so that's amazing. So I'm going to pause and maybe let Ali, she's running the breakout groups, get her ducks in a row and just introduce. Oh no, I'm sorry. We want to take some questions first. I apologize. If we could take just 2 or 3 questions in the interest of time. And I don't know, Ali, how do we take questions?
Folks can put them in the chat, or if you would prefer to raise your hand, and then maybe Ken and Casey can look through the chat to make sure we've addressed everything.
Okay.
And let's try to keep us on track. Let's try to stick to maybe 5 to 7 minutes of questions.
Okay. I'm going to look through. I'm looking for questions in the chat, so just give me a moment. Okay, first thing that I see, which is not about whether you can hear me or not, is Home Depot officially off the table? Yes, we have had it confirmed from TRC and from the representatives of Home Depot that they're officially off the table. Does anyone know if other shopping centers TRC manages housing is included? I don't know the answer to that. I'm looking for other questions in the chats. Is there a sense of why the ground lease forbids residential and why the landowner seems not interested? No, I mean, we could speculate. I have my own speculations. I don't think, I mean, I think we just don't know enough. At least that's where I am to know their reasoning behind that. I think there was a time in the past when other uses were more profitable than residential. And that's an obvious thing, that is not the case now, but that's an obvious reason why that might have been. But I just wouldn't want to speculate. Is there any feasibility for any kind of ground floor retail at all? That's something to talk about. I think the answer is there certainly is. But we really want to hear more about, we're not at really the feasibility point as much as just hearing what folks want to see happen. Someone is correcting me that the CC2 zoning is 60 feet, not 75. I thought I saw 75 in the code, Jennifer, but I stand corrected. Question about the CCA property, but I'm not going to respond to that because this is not about CCA. I guess the last question I'm seeing is what leverage do we have to get what we want? That's a long question. I feel like what we're doing with these meetings is creating the leverage. I will also say that in the new housing element, there are some proposed zoning overlays that if they got in place in a reasonable amount of time would probably prevent something that wasn't housing from going here under the law. Right now, that isn't the case, but that is a proposal. Any other questions? I'm at the end of the chat.
There's one on if you're not able to stay for the breakout sessions, is there another way to provide feedback? And I'm thinking, Casey, yeah.
Thanks, Ali, for raising that. Yes, and I have received a number of those, and we will speak to them or and share them with our board, of course. Our main email is chair@rockridge.org. We'd be happy to take your feedback in writing.
Absolutely. We're just creating basically raw feedback and lists of people's ideas, and we'll just add them. It would be good to get them within a couple of weeks so that when we compile and move on to our next step, we would have your feedback as well, if you can't stay for the meeting.
Great.
All right.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't understand. You had said earlier that there have been meetings with your grouping with RCCC and TRC in the past. Have you ever asked them what's this restriction in terms of residential housing?
They played.
Ask them.
Yeah, I mean, they played. I think several people on this call have probably met with them. I can just speak for my own couple of meetings, and they play their cards close to the vest. What they say is we are not permitted under the ground lease to do housing. That's all they'll tell us. So it is my view that TRC is not the problem on housing. It's the underlying, they have to abide by their lease with the owner. So that's where my understanding is. But this is the owner and TRC are not telling us exactly why they put that provision in. That is not something that's really sort of open to us.
So we're under
and I
the
think it was-
assumption that they could change, that could be changed with leverage from our community. Is that one of the tactics here?
Yeah, I mean,
The ground lease, yeah.
I think it's let's just, be clear, like legally, this is private property and we cannot force, neither the community nor the city can force a private property owner to do something with their property. What we're sort of saying is where our leverage comes is saying, look, we will just not support and we will oppose anything you propose that doesn't have housing. So that is a power that the city and the community do have, is to basically, and I personally don't really like to oppose things. I'd like to support things if I can, but in this case, it's really about getting them to gradually see, this is my opinion, and I think where RCPC is, getting them to gradually realize that that piece of land is really not going to be much for them unless it's got housing on it. That's sort of our angle. All right, let's move.
I was going to say, let's move on for
Yeah.
time. Ken, do you want to intro the
Yes.
breakout session?
Yes. So in our first, we're going to have 2 breakout sessions. One of them, this first one, is going to kind of cover more what I would call social questions. And you can see our proposed discussion topics here: affordable versus market rate housing. We know you're going to want to talk about that. We're happy to talk about that. We just also want to make sure you remember we're going to do a deeper dive with subject matter experts next in March. Mix and size of units, and that really speaks to who lives there. It's not just about how big the units are physically, but that really tells us what sorts of families are going to live in the units. Diversity of residents, we're trying to achieve there. Do we like rental? Do we like ownership? Do we want some of both? And anything else on the kind of social topic that you guys want to talk about. Just to briefly preview, in our second breakout group, we're going to get to the physical topics. What should it look like? How tall should it be? How much open space? So think about it as social in the first round and physical in the second round. So with that, we should go to our groups. There'll be a moderator in each group. They may be a little large because we got such a good turnout. We are going to record the groups so that we have accurate feedback, but we're also going to take notes, and then we're going to ask one of you to be a kind of report back person so we can report back to, basically what was said in the group to the larger group when we come out of the breakout groups. Hopefully that made sense.
Cool.
Allie?
Okay, just to reiterate what Ken said, I'm going to move all of you randomly into smaller breakout rooms. An RCPC facilitator and moderator will be in each room. And you are going to have until 8:10 to come back. And I will be giving you, time warnings and broadcast that throughout the meeting. So as a reminder, the topic of discussion for this first breakout room is on what types of housing and for whom should be developed at the Ridge site. I will stay in the main room. If you run into any technical questions, you can always come back here or send a chat. And with that, I will see everyone when you come back. You should see an invitation to join a breakout room now. Okay, I see folks slowly moving. But if you're able to move yourself, you can move quickly.
I don't get any invite.
That's normal. You'll move eventually. Sometimes they take a little longer with this many people on a meeting. but I see folks disappearing
No.
in a good way, disappearing. It's a little clunky of a system for Zoom to handle this many folks in a regular meeting session.
People are disappearing.
Mhm.
Where's
Is Myrna-
Myrna gone? Oh, I don't want to be unmuted. I want to be muted. Yeah,
What?
okay. I want to make sure I'm muted. What? It's cool. It's very cool. We should have our pictures there. though. Yeah.
Can we clarify, are there 2 groups,
There are 6 rooms,
6 rooms?
6 rooms, and you can,
So we're seeing, it says 1 of 2. Is that 2?
go ahead and pick whatever you're seeing. That might just be where the system is assigning you.
How do you pick?
What do you mean pick? How do you pick? But just wait. Just a minute. Here we go. How do you pick?
Yeah, that's a question. How do you pick?
Yes.
Might be based on when you signed in.
That's a good question. That's a good point.
Look at all these people disappearing because they're being moved around.
I
to different
know.
places. It's fascinating. Very cool. Yeah.
Right, we're the lucky few who still haven't been forcibly moved.
I thought I got an invite that popped up and then it disappeared when I clicked it.
That is potentially possible.
We have no invite.
Mhm.
Do we need a name up? No.
I'll move you if you don't get I'm able to move people to, it might be the version, if you have an older version of Zoom downloaded, sometimes it doesn't move you quite as easily. So rest assured, you will get assigned.
See, look, we're all disappearing.
All
We're gonna
right.
be- we're gonna have-
Helen, I'm gonna move you myself. Natalie, I'm gonna move you myself too.
It's just a couple of.
Okay, and then you. All right. Let's see.
I saw a group for a moment with Casey's name on it, but then it disappeared. So I don't know what happened.
All right, let's see here. Hey, Barbara, I'm gonna move you into a breakout room, okay? All right, Tom. Find you, Tom. Somehow it thinks you're already in Casey's room, so I am gonna move you. Do you mind, you're gonna go with Ken, since Casey's not
Oh,
enough right now. And then Francesca. Or Joanna, what's that? Francesca, I am gonna move you into a breakout room. Okay. Hi, Joanna. Would you like me to move you into a breakout room for this smaller group discussion? Okay, great. I am going to move you into Luisa's room. Hey, Thomas. Would you like me to move you into a breakout room? We're having a small group discussion. You're muted right now.
Hi, my internet cut out, so I
All
got
good.
breakout room.
Do you remember what room you were in, or would you like me to assign you one, William?
But I didn't.
You didn't get
I-
assigned.
yeah.
Did you go to Goldman School of Public
Yeah,
Policy?
I think you're
Okay,
the.
yeah.
Okay, were you in the NPA?
Yes, I was. Your name looks very familiar.
Funny.
Nice to meet you. I'm gonna send you to a breakout room now.
Thank you so much.
In room 2 with Andrew. And then Thomas, I'm sorry, you were muted before, but shall I put you in a breakout room to have a small group discussion? Looks like you're saying yes. Okay, I'm gonna ask you to unmute. There we go. Okay. Would you like to go into a breakout room?
Yes, is Kirk Peterson there?
Yes, I can find what room Kirk is in.
Okay,
And send you.
and can you turn off my video?
I can, I believe. I can't, but you could always, there's a setting where you can do it yourself, if you find it on the Zoom settings, or you can just put a pillow over the camera if you want.
I mean, I'm in bed and I don't look very good.
You're not the only one in bed. It's okay. We've had a couple people joining us from bed.
All right, well, whatever.
Okay, cool. Then I'm going to send you in with Kirk and Andrew are in a room together. So there you go. Testing audio. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. While we wait for everybody to come back. I'm sorry if I interrupted anybody mid-sentence while you were having a conversation. I always feel bad doing that.
It's weird how you hear the sirens out of your own window and then out of everybody else's window.
Mm-hmm.
Ally, did we end up with just the 5 groups or did we have more?
We had 6.
Okay. I'm not sure if we need to go around and do the report back. We'll figure it out. Does someone want to start? We'll just kind of make sure we get to all 6 groups.
Sure, we can go by the room numbers if we
Oh,
want.
okay. I don't remember what my room
In
was.
room 1, that was the group led by Star. Would anyone from that group like to go?
I'm happy to report if anybody else in the group wants to give a recap. So our group, people seem to agree that low income is very necessary. We heard from at least one renter who, couldn't live in the neighborhood without low income housing. Someone else mentioned that, low income is great, but we need to recognize that without some sort of funding, it's going to be difficult to do on that site. Another person recognized that there's a lot of applications coming in for studios and 1-bedrooms, and there's a lot of ADUs that are being built in the neighborhood. That seems to be going well. So in terms of mix, one question is, what would the rest of the site be used for? Would there be open space or anything that would be, conducive to families? People expressed concern about people who work at places like Safeway who can't afford to live here. So smaller spaces seem like they might be more ideal, especially on that particular site. And same with renting versus owning because of the nature of the site. I think that there was some agreement, at least by a couple of people, that having both affordable and market rate might be good, but people are interested in knowing whether there's an empty market rate, nearby, because that's something that people have heard. And I think that is pretty much it. If anybody else in the group, if I left anything out, feel free to chime in.
All right, let's go to the next group.
That was Andrew's group, number 2.
Oh, yes. So I think our group said some of the same things. There was, I think, some consensus on an interest in seeing ground floor retail below the housing, so that if there were housing there, there would be walkable amenities to make it, more of a neighborhood. In terms of the mix, one of our contributors mentioned that in Rockridge, it can be very hard for a family who can't afford to buy or find a house to find rental properties that are big enough for a family. So in addition to the usual studios and 1-bedrooms, there was some talk of building 3-bedroom units for families, with the realization that can cut down on profitability per square foot. Somebody else mentioned the goal of ownership and said that there's not many condos in the city of Oakland, and if some of the housing could be condos and not apartments, that might be interesting. In terms of affordability, we had a lot of different opinions. One contributor pushed for sort of the deepest affordability levels for a smaller number of units, maybe 30% median income, feeling that was important. Several people were advocating for a large diversity of levels. And someone even mentioned that maybe Oakland could actually incentivize that by having sort of an increase in density bonus for developers who explicitly create a variety of affordability levels to try to increase the diversity of the neighborhood. But several people, stressed affordability and, had a vision of Rockridge as not just a wealthy enclave for the few who could afford houses.
That's
All right.
Next group was group 4 that Mark and Robin led.
Robin's going to report.
Did you
Hi.
skip group 3?
Yes.
Ellie?
I'm sorry, group 3. That was Casey's group.
Okay.
No problem.
Casey, why don't you go?
Okay, I think Eli from our group wanted to speak, but
I can speak.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a nice discussion. It seems like we were broadly in support of housing at the site. Also similar to other groups, general support for larger units for families would be ideal. We had a little bit of a discussion around, what would we like to see in our ideal world, with also the recognition that it is, a site owned by a private landowner. And so what would we accept? And that certainly, housing on the site is far better than it continuing to be a sad vacant. So what would ultimately feasible, definitely a desire for some affordability on the site, but also with the, the recognition of to what extent that is, could be done. And yeah, and I expressed the desire that I hope to see, as many units as possible. So we could have more neighbors in our community, open up our community to more people, and have more potential customers for our great College Avenue Business District.
Thanks, Eli. That was a perfect summary. The only thing I would add is regarding the access road between 2 major development projects, or it's at the end of one of the projects above CCA. Just noting that.
Great. Okay, now group 4, which was Mark and Robin. I believe Robin's giving the report out.
Yes. I think we all are kind of on the same page. I heard a lot of tolerance for high density. There was some concern about, if the ground floor, what you do on the ground floor, if it's not retail, then you just have this sort of blank wall where people walk by, and that's not a real pleasant community. So The retail, not wanting something big like Safeway, wanting something more looking like what College Avenue has. There was a lot of discussion about moderate income housing, where we have this gap of people who maybe usually can't afford the support for housing, so they fall into a hole. And if there was a way to support moderate housing, would be really great. We had some people who liked a condo look and some people who didn't, but overall, I think we're all on the same page. If I'm missing anything, let me know.
Yeah, let me just add that there are some ideas of potentially thinking of the property as not just being developed by this particular developer, but being paired in some way in a partnership with a nonprofit housing developer. That optimizes the potential for more affordable housing. As an auxiliary to that point was also, there might be some way of pairing a development on that property with another potentially affordable housing site like at the BART station. And the last point that I think was of note is that we can think about taking advantage of the density, the state law density bonus for affordable housing that can then exceed the height limits that are zoned for the property as a way of allowing more affordable units to be financially realistically built.
Okay, who's next?
Next, if my math is right, we have group 5, which was led by Ken.
Okay, so we didn't get a chance to nominate someone, so I'll try to go through my notes here. I think there was general agreement that we want to see affordability defined in various different ways on the site. We want to make this available to all kinds of folks. There was description of teachers, nurses, and firefighters could be described as public service professionals. The other thing that I think was notable in our group was there was quite a bit of attention paid to less common or less traditional forms of affordable housing, land trusts, sort of co-op models where folks are able to get some equity and some ownership without, having to buy a very expensive condo. And that was sort of focused on that. This is, the idea from a couple of folks, I think, is this is an opportunity to kind of look outside the box and look at a different way of ownership and financing structure to get something that speaks more to what the community needs, I think, is what folks were saying. There was an idea that I think is sort of that same density bonus idea that if you can get high enough here, you've got great views, you can probably see the bay at some height up there, and why not milk the value of those units on the top to be able to provide a lot more affordable units elsewhere in the project. There was someone who was less excited by seeing single building affordable buildings and wanted to see the affordability mixed into all the buildings. And I think I would just end with an interesting comment that Alex made, which was there's probably no neighborhood anywhere that has more people who are professionals in a field related to housing, and that we should really get them all together and come up with a really brilliant idea. And I said, Alex, if you can get them all to agree, that would be really brilliant. So, it's a good idea. There's a lot of us who have a lot of background. There's probably collectively hundreds of years of background in development and housing living in this neighborhood. So I will leave it with that.
That's great. And last but not least was our 6th group, which was led by Louisa, or moderated by Louisa.
Yeah, a lot of similar trends. I think the thing that our group focused a lot on was like different levels of diversity. So both talking about levels of different affordability, emphasizing the need for both very low affordability as well as some market rate to sort of create an actually socioeconomically diverse area, not on one side of the spectrum or the other. but also diversity in terms of unit types. There's some discussion around like micro units, or sort of a way of creating like a lot of smaller units that might appeal to one demographic, as well as ensuring that there's 2 or 3 bedroom units that could house families, because that's a big challenge for families to be able to afford to find a decent place for rent. So those were but I think the general theme was a mix of things, because it is a large site. So not having a monolith, having things that are having many different people, which makes up a complex and diverse micro neighborhood within the larger neighborhoods that we exist in.
Wonderful. Okay, in the interest of time, Ken, would you like to intro the discussion question for group 2, or continue this discussion?
No, I think we should go into group 2, and I'm not sure if I'm not still sharing. I don't think, am I? No, but
no, you're not.
The idea behind group 2 is we talked in group 1 about the sort of social aspects, which are very important. That's why we put it first, but also very important are what should it look like physically. Some of our questions were, what other things, planners like to call them uses, which I've never loved, it's such a wonky word, but what other things besides housing, retail, other things do we want to see on the site? What do we feel about open space, parking, the height and density of buildings? Are we concerned about traffic and transportation? If so, how so? And what do we feel is important on the sustainability side of things? So that will be our topic for group 2. Are we going into our groups?
Great. Yes, one quick thing. I've had a couple people ask why they can't individually chat people that aren't co-hosts with RCPC. I think that's a Zoom settings issue, but we do want to encourage everyone to put their emails in the chat, in the group chat, if you're comfortable with that, so that we can stay in touch. Everyone here is neighbors or future neighbors, and then we want to be able to keep you updated on the project and the next steps going.
Maybe should we pause for about 2 minutes to let people put their emails in before they go into their small groups? Because I don't know, can you do it when you're in a small group, or do you have to be in the big group?
It's easier to just do it right now while everybody.
Yeah, so let's just pause and let people, because we'd really like to be able to like spit back at you what we're doing next and all that with your emails.
And I'll put mine in there too.
All right, we'll give this about 2 minutes. See how fast you can all type.
Ken, do you mean just rename yourself by putting your email in there?
I'll put it in the chat.
Ah, gotcha.
In the chat, yes, and to everyone would be the selection that.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And then while folks are doing that, I will let everyone know that we're going to go into breakout rooms again, like Ken said. There will be, it's random, so there will be different folks in the room. I know you probably got attached, but it's good to meet all of your neighbors. And hopefully it goes quicker this time. Zoom is a little slow with meetings of this size sometimes and assigning folks to breakout rooms. So just be patient, and I will be here in the main room if you get lost somehow.
What are the 3 topics for this one, or 4?
I actually am going to put it in the chat right now.
Thank
right
you.
now.
And I can read it aloud while you're breakout grouping.
That'd be great.
So what should the housing look like, and what other amenities and uses might accompany it? Other discussion topics are, what other uses together with housing would we want on site? What sort of open space would we like to see as a part of the development? How much parking is desirable? What do we think about height and density of buildings built here? What are our other thoughts about traffic and transportation? And what should be done on the sustainability green front?
Okay, yeah. that's a mouthful. Okay.
Like I said, well, she's going to drop it in the chat, and your host may be able to pull it up on their screen.
Thank you.
Breakout, just want to say thank you to Kira O'Doherty from Councilmember Kolb's office. She's just here to listen, but I appreciate that.
Yes, very appreciative. Okay, with that, I am going to move everyone into groups. We will have about 17 minutes for this one, so we'll come back at 8:45 to stay on track, share out again, and then talk about next steps and get everybody done by 9, hopefully. So see you all soon. Okay, Bill, Jason, I need to put you in rooms. Bill. You are gonna join Ken. But you should see, there we go. And then Jason. Oh, you're back. All right, let's try again.
I momentarily went to another room, but then I came back to the main room.
Okay, well, we'll find one that you like.
I may have messed up on the Zoom thing there.
All good. That's why I'm here. Let's try it again. Bill is back again. Okay. I'm so sorry. I don't know why it's not loading for you. Let's try again. Okay. And then Jason. Jason, do you see any pop-up that is inviting you to join a room?
Allie, I keep getting just a blank screen and then I hit a back to meeting because nothing's happening.
Okay,
So
let's try this again.
I can just not hit that, but then it just nothing's. I'm not in a group yet, so
Let's
it's
try
not
it.
showing up.
You should be joining Mark's room. Let's try that. Jason, if you can hear me, maybe log out of the meeting and log back in. Hi, Joan. Hi, Joan. Would you like me to move you into a small? Okay. Hey, Jason, you're back. Did you get kicked out again?
I was in a limbo. I was in the Bardo, I think, but it's fine. I'll just wait here and hear the
report
feedback.
out.
Yeah, the
I'm
report
so
out.
sorry. Maybe if you log out and then log back into the meeting, it might help, but I'm really sorry.
It might. I said there's a button that says breakout rooms, but anyway, I think it's a little late. Anyway, I'm
Okay.
on my phone, so maybe that's the part of the problem. then.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Zoom is not
Okay.
an exact science, unfortunately.
Yeah, but thank you for the effort. Anyway.
Thank you for coming. Hey, Kira. If you got kicked out of a room and want to go back in, let me know. Otherwise, you can hang out in here until we only have a couple minutes left until they close.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to hear the readouts.
Sure. Hey, welcome back.
Hey, Ally, did we lose the emails or do we have them?
We have them. The regular chat lives in the main room.
Okay.
All right, I think everybody is back.
All right, so go back and do our report outs again.
Yeah. Let's go reverse order of rooms this time, if that's okay. Well, let's start with group number 6, which was led by Luisa's room or moderation.
What? I don't know.
All right, we covered a lot of ground. there were sort of, when it came to like height and size of buildings, there were differing opinions. Where some people expressed wanting to sort of keep the scale smaller and less dense around the corner, and others expressing sort of the idea that this site is on a busy intersection and significantly lower than the CCA site as well, and so could actually handle a building of 10 plus stories because it would fit scale wise, given that it's sort of at a lower spot. So there's differing opinions there. I think everyone agreed that sort of integration of green space and sort of recreation area was important. There was talk about connecting it to the quarry in the back, but making sure that the site was sort of integrated into the urban fabric where people could walk and bike amongst it. There was mention of different of the idea that it'd be wonderful it could be designed so that people who don't live like in the housing that's built here would actually want to come and spend time there, whatever the sort of attractions are. There's mention of pickleball, but also if there is nice green spaces to hang out, if someone a few blocks away comes here to spend time, or even a neighborhood away, that would be a real win.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was what we covered.
Yeah, and the greens warm. Yep.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, shall we move on to group number 5, which was Ken's moderation?
Okay. So there was one, I'm going to start off with one overall comment that I thought said a lot in a short sentence, which was, how can we make it a place? How can we make it have character, feel like part of the neighborhood, not feel like a extension of the shopping center? I think one person said that, but I think most people in the group, or all people in the group, would agree with that sentiment. We talked a little bit about the height. There was general agreement with something, there was acknowledgement that under the 60-foot zoning with the density bonus, which lets you get some more, you could get up to 7 or 8 stories, and that seemed like a comfortable height. There was someone who thought that maybe more like 100 feet would be fine. There was someone who wanted to make sure that nobody wanted it to be 200 or 250 feet. And there was confirmation that nobody wanted it to be 200 or 250 feet. And so let's see, there was very much the desire to activate it, to have commercial, both because there are certain things needed in the community, and CVS was mentioned, I shouldn't say CVS, a pharmacy was mentioned as something that's not there, but also not just because we may need a pharmacy, but just because the site might feel a little bit cold and unactivated without retail. So I think there was a lot of support for retail, a lot of support for having some activity in the evening, some desire for public space, acknowledging there is a public space plan next door at CCA, but still wanting there to be some here as well. And then I think not everyone weighed in on this, but several people were concerned that there be enough parking, that, it's difficult. Street parking is pretty hard here, and that there's going to need to be enough parking to serve the residents. So I will leave it at that.
Awesome. Moving on to group number 4, Mark and Robin, or someone from the group that they chose.
Hi, Robin here. Okay, we talked about height as well, but not in nearly specific terms as your group did, but we said it can take a fairly level height. We can go high in the site. We also expressed high density as well. There was a lot of concern about how it looked, and same comments as our last meeting, where we don't just want a big old long blank wall. We want it to feel like a community. For the most part, we agreed that we should have a look that is integrated with the CCA site and the site across the housing across the street. We talked about sustainability, and it's important and maybe even required for there to be sustainability as part of the project. And it was discussed about having solar panels there on the parking garage. There was a very interesting comment about the retail space and possibly having something that resembles the Emeryville Public Market, where you have very small family operations providing restaurants or retail, that would be good. And there was discussion of possibly a place where you could bring some food trucks in on a weekly basis. Am I missing something, Mark?
I think just following up on what you said, the one final comment was, in terms of when we think about space on the property, think about spaces that could be used for multiple purposes at different times. That we should be imaginative, and particularly in terms of what might be public spaces. They could be used at some point for pickleball courts, but also possibly for food trucks on the weekends. But again, thinking more imaginatively about uses of space and uses of spaces in buildings, on the roofs and so on. So again, I think there's a lot of room to be creative in a constructive way.
Skateboarding on the roof. We have high barriers.
As long as you don't live on the top floor. I think I suggested the top of the Safeway parking lot on top of Safeway. Could be an open space.
Great.
It's never used during the day, during the week.
Okay, wonderful. Moving on to group number 3, moderated by Casey.
Hi, everyone. Okay, great ideas from our group about specifically the entryway and the access points. And that was for aesthetics purposes. A fountain was suggested on like the corner of that key corner. I thought that was really beautiful. Also staircases, which there are so many staircases throughout Rockridge and other neighborhoods. And so what can be done to incorporate those throughout the site? There is strong support for density for the amount that is feasible at that location and for low parking requirements because of how transit rich it is. However, there was definitely a call to better integrate that transit, that the bus station is kind of in the middle of nowhere, and it would be better, it should be reassessed to have a better location. Another reason why the entryway was so vital to this group was just how pedestrian rich it is, with all the students either running to the upper campus of Tech or to get lunch and shop at the Ridge, how many seniors we have walking in the vicinity, and the need to just really preserve great walking areas for pedestrians. And also the need for security for all folks. And then another interesting question was about, we didn't dive too deep into this, but just if retail is struggling with sites across the street at the Baxter and the Merrill Gardens, what can be done on this site that might ensure that the sites are activated and not vacant? I think it's kind of different because it's in an actual shopping center, but I think it's important to raise the data in the vicinity. So I think that was it.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, group number 2, Andrew, moderating.
Yes, I mean, our group, I think, echoed a lot of the things that have already been said, but let me add a few more. In terms of some of the specific amenities that might come along with the ground floor retail, it was mentioned that it might be a place for a theater, a nursery, because we used to have sort of a nursery at the drugstore there, but no longer. Even a post office was mentioned, is maybe there's demand in between the Temescal and Elmwood post offices for another post office. One commenter advocated for a real park of a few hundred feet square where people could sit and play catch or whatever. In terms of height, there were some different opinions. One commentator pushed for a tower, basically if need be, to get enough housing in there. Other people mentioned that it would be nice for the community to have some models of buildings of what more people can like, and mentioned the MacArthur BART project in particular as something that didn't exactly win over the community with its aesthetics. But people did point out, contra Ken's group, that the 8 to 9 story building is about the worst you can do in terms of cost effectiveness. You either have to go lower than that or higher than that to have it pencil out. In terms of sustainability, again, I think like Casey's group, it was mentioned that hopefully the parking minimums can be reduced a little bit, maybe 1 spot per unit rather than 2. Although it was also pointed out that a lot of that isn't driven by governments, but it's often driven by the financing. Electric car chargers were, of course, mentioned. And to save space, people discussed the idea of having structured rather than surface parking. But it was also pointed out that because it's basically bedrock there, that you're not going to excavate, so you can't burrow the parking, but maybe you could raise it to the 2nd story so that it doesn't interfere with the pedestrian experience. Also on sustainability, somebody mentioned, well, if you did have one tower that wasn't blocked by other buildings, that you could, in addition to putting solar on the roof, might be able to put solar on the sides in some way, maybe kind of louvered to provide shade and stuff, and that might make the building a little bit more self-sustaining. And somebody also seconded the idea of rethinking the site as an AC transit hub. That was brought up years ago when it was going to be the shopping center. AC Transit balked, but maybe if it's a different vision with a lot more residential, AC Transit could rethink that.
Thank you, Andrew. So many possibilities. And then last, group number 1, that was moderated by Star.
Yeah, like a lot of the other groups, a lot of similar ideas. Our particular group had a couple of really strong proponents for as much height and density as was economically feasible. Another person was maybe not as into the height and density, but was resigned, which is, somewhat supportive. Definitely an emphasis by one person, and I think everybody agreed about having an entryway that needs to be welcoming and open to the public, and maybe combining, with open space on the property. In terms of open space, and then I'll get back to uses. A lot of people mentioned the fact that we're close to a lot of other open spaces, the cemeteries and the golf course and places like that. So making connections with those, but also having at least some open space on the property, especially if there's families. In terms of uses, there was some emphasis on non-traditional, because there's a lot of traditional retail in the neighborhood. And I guess that there's some in the backstore that, it's not even full. So having something like workspace on the ground floor for people, who want to not have to go into work, but have a place nearby to work. Artist studios was another thought that came up. I think those are the main ones. I think that, let's see, for parking, I think, there wasn't a lot of desire for a lot of parking, but recognition that especially if there's families, you do need some parking, and finding funding sources was something that came up sort of tangentially. And we didn't really get to the rest of the issues, except that traffic seems to be inevitable.
Thank you. Great discussions. Ken, I am going to hand it back to you.
Okay, great. We're just on time. I know it's 9, so Casey, help jump in, but I think I want to again make sure first that you've put all your emails in the chat. We're going to create some kind of compendium, and I think I'm calling it a compendium because we're not going to try to make it all, this is what they said. It's going to be more of a listing of divergent viewpoints. That's where we are now, right? And kind of get back to you on next steps. The one solid next step we know we have is in March, date and time to be announced. We're going to do a deep dive on affordability, and we hope you'll all attend that. It'll be really interesting. And, we will also get back to you on next steps beyond that, around kind of trying to craft some kind of a vision out of all of this input and future meetings and workshops and things like that as we go through the year. We don't have that really figured out yet, but now that we know how to reach out to all of you, we'll definitely keep you in touch. Casey, is there anything else you want to add?
No, I just want to thank everyone for really excellent ideas and great enthusiasm and for coming out on Zoom to hang out. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks for having us. Take
Thank you.
care.
This is great.
Thank you.